We're talking about the GDP number there. Education sector is another sector that took a hit from the coronavirus pandemic with the closure of schools across the state. Now, this reflected in the growth rate of the sector in the second quarter of this year. According to the latest GDP number released by the National Bureau of Statistics, the sector recorded a negative growth. The real growth in education year-on-year stood at minus 24.12% in second quarter, a decrease of minus 25.09 percent points from the corresponding quarter of 2019, which was estimated at 0.96%. Now, when compared with the previous quarter's rate of 0.69%, the sector growth decreased by minus 24.81 points. The sector contributed 1.43% to the total real GDP in second quarter, which was lower than 1.77% reported for the corresponding quarter in 2019. Well, joining me now to look at the critical issues around this sector is the former Vice Chancellor of the National Open University of Nigeria, Professor Olubinro Jegede. Thank you very much, Professor Jegede, for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So how would you contextualize the damage done to the education sector by the pandemic, and what is your assessment of how the government has handled the situation so far?
Thank you very much. Just like in every other sector, education has been hard hit by the pandemic, COVID-19. It has disrupted and devastated the sector, and it has affected households, pupils, lecturers, universities, colleges of education, and everywhere else. COVID-19, as we know it now, has affected 24 million people around the world, with about 900,000 deaths. And in Nigeria, I think the record is that it has affected 54,000 people and about 1,000 people dead. But what we must know is that COVID-19 is never going to go away. It is too widespread and too transmissible. The best case scenario is getting a vaccine and a better treatment, making it less dangerous and less disruptive. Education must change urgently and immediately to cope with the pandemics. If it's going to be with us, if COVID-19 is going to be with us, education must change. It must accept the pandemic or the changes that are being meted out to the Nigerian public, and in fact the whole world. It must accept it as part of our dress code. It has to be something we must deal with on a daily basis. And that's why we need to move ahead to make sure that our education system, together with the economy, are able to handle what we have gotten now through the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, you talked about the fact that education must change in line with the pandemic. What sort of change do you think we should have as it is now? Don't forget, it's a pandemic. It's a health issue. And so the government had to take the action they took by, okay, schools, please close. So if we say we have to move ahead, with education, the pandemic has come to stay with us, the coronavirus has come to stay with us. What sort of change should we be, having as it is now?
Well, the changes and how to implement them must be multi-sectoral. Education has to work with the economy. It has to work with every other aspects of the economy to make sure that education is in the right track. The health sector must be involved. With our economy, as you mentioned, rightly mentioned earlier, our economy is going down the drains. We have been told that Nigeria is one of the 8 countries in the World Bank red zones. That is, our GDP, like other 7 countries that is in the World Bank red zone, has been falling steadily over the past 20 years. And so something has to be done. Our GDP which is a measure, a monetary value of all finished goods and services that is used to estimate the size of a country's economy, is expected to reach 398 billion by the end of this year. But our GDP per capita, that is the indicator of individual share of wealth in Nigeria, is only 1,900 US dollars, meaning if they divide of the split all the money that we have that comes from goods and services in this country, each person in this country, each of the 200 million people we have in this country, we only have about 700,000 naira. So our budget is in trouble. We have a budget of 10.5 trillion with a deficit already of 2 trillion or 2.2 trillion. And so there is a big problem. Education has got only 706 billion in the budget, less than 10%. With a deficit, with education has now gone to minus 24.1% in the second quarter alone. So something needs to be done. First, education needs to put together a team of top, crack, expert educational strategists. They must be strategists that will work with the health sector to fashion out what to do. The second is to undertake massive training and retraining of pupils and teachers on how to mitigate the damaging effect of COVID-19 and what families should do. Third, we must provide all schools and institutions with necessary equipment and protocols on how to deal with the pandemic. Fourth, Nigeria should immediately immerse herself in transiting into a purely 100% digital learning and evaluation ecosystem. Yes, we do not have the necessary infrastructure, but we cannot wait. We must leapfrog. And that's what I think we should do
now,
as a way of making sure that education is aligned with what COVID-19 has brought to Nigeria.
Yeah, you talked about the GDP numbers. Yes, looking at those latest data, minus 24.12%, no thanks to the pandemic. However,
yes,
looking back the previous quarter, the growth rate hasn't been impressive either, and the sector's contribution to the GDP is less than 2%. As an educationist, does this worry you? Should this sector be doing better than this? What are the key challenges?
Yes, the sector should be doing better than it is. With minus 24.1, it is embarrassing, to say the least. As a country, 60 years of independence, we must do something about it. At the moment, let me just start by saying some of the problems we have in Nigeria, or the major, is that we have not moved on with the times. It looks like, it's not even that it looks like, I think that is what is happening. We are using analog techniques to solve digital problems in Nigeria. And if we are doing that, we'll be putting the round pegs in square holes. It means instead of even working from the answer as we should be doing, we are still groping in the dark. We need to change. And to change, as I've always said, we must decide on a number of things to be done. Number one, the national policy on education is due for a total rewrite. We need a policy change in the direction. The current national policy on education was written in 1976 and revised several years after. It is now very obsolete. Our curriculum in schools, in colleges, in the primary schools, in the universities are dated, or as we say, they are outdated. Our modern 21st century education must be fully digital and accessible 24/7. Our teaching and learning model must change from the traditional pedagogy to what is now being called as heutagogy or webagogy. We must go beyond traditional algorithm to what is now being called quantum algorithm or quantum computing and quantum biology. Indeed, we must move to quantum technologies. The adoption of technologies must be spearheaded by seasoned educators with 21st century thinking. Schools, colleges, and universities, as I said, as currently constituted, will be redundant very soon if we don't do something about it. And institutions all over the world are now being virtual, they are being meta, they are being open in nature and in character. And so we must move ahead. I mean, yes, I disagree with the budget allocation to the sector. Like I said, we have only 706 billion. And with minus 24.1% performance, we really need to pump in a lot of money into our education system. Yes, as has been said, it is below what is happening generally in the world. The universities must also work hard to change the whole system and meet with what is happening around the world, as well as what is happening, what people are doing to stem the pandemic. We must look inwards. The world is moving to the space age. And very soon, many countries will be sending their people to live on the moon. What are we doing in Nigeria? Yes, infrastructure is not there, but we must move.
Absolutely.
And like I said, if people are going, what it means is that very soon the people from the developed world will be holidaying in the moon and will still be struggling here. In fact, they are going to leave us behind. We must make sure that we teach our children, our curriculum will be changed. And we must begin to teach everything that the world now needs. We must use artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, cognitive science, mechatronics, all this, and blockchains. All this we must use. We must input them in our curriculum. Our curricula, both in the primary, secondary, and university system, are outdated completely. In fact, we are going backwards. We are about 50 years behind the world in the curriculum that is being used in schools and universities. And we cannot afford that to happen in Nigeria.
Right, Professor, just as you said, the application of digital tool for learning is what has, come with the pandemic. However, that seems to have revealed some kind of divide in the education system in the country. Yes, we've seen most of the students, particularly those of them in the urban areas, those in the private schools, whether university or secondary school or primary school, are leveraging technology to learn. But yet we have other children in the rural areas or from the poor backgrounds are not able to do that because they don't have the wherewithal. How do we bridge this gap? How do we deal with this situation if we have to, move on with this pandemic? And of course, if you say that technology is where to go now, we have to inculcate it in our curriculum.
Yes. Well, COVID-19 caught the whole world unawares. But other parts of the world have found ways of managing their education. Our Minister of Education is doing his best. The country is trying as much as possible. But you cannot give what you don't have, because we did not prepare for this. We didn't know what was coming ahead, and we did not even move with the whole world by going digital. We are now in this problem. Yes, we have problem with infrastructure. The rural areas don't have it. The children don't have computers. Light is a problem. Water is a problem. Network is a problem. But why don't we ask ourselves, how are other countries doing it? South Africa is doing it. Kenya is doing it. Ghana is doing it. So why must we hide? Why must we bury our head in the sand like the ostrich? I know everybody talks about the infrastructure deficit in accepting e-learning or digital learning or online learning. We always talk about lack of appropriate technical infrastructure or whatever, rural versus urban. But let me tell you one thing, and this is what I'm sure the viewers will agree with me about. The most appropriate digital device as at now is the mobile phone. For the past 8 years, some of us have been promoting mobile phones, and Nigeria has got a penetration of more than 95% mobile phones. Even grandmothers have it. My 97-year-old mother has got a mobile phone. So Nigeria has a very high mobile density and is growing fast. Other countries are now leveraging on using mobile phones to teach online education, e-learning. Instead of students using it to go on pornography or do whatever or all sorts of things, we can organize it in such a way that they use mobile phone to learn. It is being done in other countries. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I'm not just telling stories here.
Okay,
like I said, for the past 8 years, United Nations, UNESCO has been talking about we using it. We must use it. South Africa uses it. Kenya uses it. Rwanda uses it. Botswana uses that. So we need to leverage on what we have.
Yeah, yes. Professor, we really don't have much time for this conversation. I know that there are a lot of issues in the education sector to, to talk about. The issues of the strike. We've seen ASU, despite the lockdown of this COVID-19 and all that, ASU is on strike. The universities, even if the government says, okay, students go back to school, ASU is not ready to go back to school. There's that issue there and all of that. Now, the president has just announced 9-point priority areas where he intends to focus on in the next 3 years, and education is one of them. For you, what would you want to see done as quickly as possible in the education sector?
The president, as part of his 9-point program for the next 3 years, the president has talked about expanding access to quality education. The president is spot on with this, and I support him 100%. We must expand access and use digital mode of education. This will make education accessible, affordable, cost-effective, and must reach the unreached. It is also flexible. To provide access and quality education, Nigeria must be ready to build learning power, expose all our learners to computational thinking and design thinking, and expose our children to skills of what is now called ultra learning. They should be autonomous learners and learners who learn to learn. Nigeria must invest in the knowledge economy, in which the raw material is knowledge, the skill is knowledge processing, and the final product is also knowledge, leading to wisdom. Nigeria must aim at being a knowledge superpower in 5 years from now. If we are to make education accessible if we are to make Nigerians accessible to quality education, then we must put in all the other things that will make for quality. Teachers must be trained. At the moment, and we must hire teachers. We don't have it. The system, the primary and secondary school system needs about 200,000 teachers in the next 2-3 years in Nigeria. The university system requires at least 150,000 academics with PhDs, at least with masters. We don't have it. How do we move on? How do we provide access to quality education if we don't have this? The brick and mortar world system, the classroom system is no longer being used in the world. It has failed. There are 1.7 or 1.9 million people wanting to go to school.
Well,
and we can't afford it. So we must go digital.
I'm sorry we have to leave this conversation. I wish we have more time to, dwell on this, but I think it's a continuous discussion, and we hope definitely the government will get it right. Professor Olubemiro Jegede, the former Vice Chancellor of the National Open University of Nigeria. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. And after the break, we'll talk commodities. Do stay with us.